He's also vice mayor of the city of Fernandina Beach, and the one person who stood up against paid parking, Darren Askew. So I'm proud to live here in Nassau County, as I know all you are, a deeply conservative county that values fiscal responsibility, strong leadership, and thoughtful growth. And as a taxpayer and as someone who has watched really the evolution of this county over the years, I've seen the current commission. They've maintained a modified rollback rate on their millage. I've seen some services improve, and that's no small accomplishment. When you look at the state of Florida, they've played a very instrumental role in supporting these efforts through strategic appropriations. And myself, having served as county commissioner from 2016 to 2020, I understand firsthand how critical those partnerships with the state and even the local community really are. And yet, even when things are going well, there's always room for improvement, which is what brings us here today. We're honored to welcome a leader who embodies those same principles of conservative governance, fiscal discipline, and public service. Our guest, he began his career in public office in 2008, running for county commissioner in Hernando County. He's been a strong advocate for small government and low taxes, and he took that mission to Tallahassee, where he served in both the Florida House of Representatives and the Florida Senate. 6 months to the day, he was appointed by Governor Ron DeSantis to serve as Florida's Chief Financial Officer. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the Chief Financial Officer of the great free state of Florida, Blaise Ingoglia.
Thank you, Brian. So actually, is that true? Is it 6 months today? Well, happy 6-month birthday to me. I did not know that. So first, I want to thank you guys for coming here today. I'd like to thank the press for coming here so we can do this presentation. As you know, I have been across the state on what we're calling the Fiscal Accountability Tour. Being in Tallahassee and looking at local governments, there's a lot of people that are protecting corporate interests. There are a lot of people protecting government interests, but there are very few people actually protecting the taxpayer interest. And as your CFO, one of the things that I have promised to do is be a taxpayer advocate. And that's one of the big reasons why we are here today. Now, I will tell you that we are not here under great circumstances, because I think some of the information we're going to present here will be a little sobering and should present an opportunity for the county, in my opinion, to do better in making sure that we are delivering on the promise of a smaller and more accountable government. But before we start, I do want to recognize somebody who is very near and dear to my heart. I love this man, and I love everything that he does for our community. Sheriff Leeper, thank you for being here this evening. So I am Chief Financial Officer Blaise Ingoglia. It is an honor to be your CFO of the great state of Florida. And since entering this office, I have been on a mission to highlight excessive and wasteful spending of local governments, whether they are a blue government or whether they are a red government, because it does not matter to me what party you belong to. What matters to me is the taxpayers. So if you are a red government that is overspending or a blue government that is being fiscally responsible, you're going to hear from me. Most of them, unfortunately, are bad news. Not so much good news, but there are pockets of good news. And I'm just going to say this and lay this predicate before we go into the presentation and continue, is that there have been some red counties that have not been very fiscally responsible with your money, and I have called them out. And the media loves to spin the narrative that we are doing this exercise to only criticize blue counties. But I will tell you that what we have seen so far, this is now the 12th local government that we have reviewed, that, believe it or not, the city of Orlando, which is a blue area, blue mayor, very heavily Democrat, has shown the most fiscal restraint. Now, the media doesn't like that because it actually validates that our methodology is accurate and correct. Just want you to keep that in mind as we go through these numbers. So we are here today in Nassau County, which is a red county. So I'm just going to say this, I'm going to say this up front, is that we all need to do better when it comes to delivering on the promise of affordability, because it is going to be on the ballot in November 26th, and it's going to continue being on the ballot. As people move to the great state of Florida, there's going to be a greater demand for housing, which means property values are going to go up over time, and so will property taxes. We need constitutional constraint to hold local governments accountable and force them, unfortunately, into spending within their means and not using you guys as a piggy bank, because that's what government has been doing since the dawn of time. And it will not happen on my watch. I'm going to spend another 8 years in this office, and my promise to you is I'm going to wake up every day making sure that I look out for you. But we are here today in these exercises to show that property tax reform is needed, property tax reform is wanted, and tax reform is absolutely 100% possible. So far, across 11 local governments that we have done this exercise with, we have uncovered $1.86 billion in wasteful, excessive spending in just those 11 governments, just in the 2024-2025 election cycle. That is not a cumulative total. That is a running total for just 1 year. That is $1.86 billion with a B, and that belongs in the bank accounts and the wallets and the purses of the taxpayers, not of government. That is $1.86 billion worth of property tax cuts that could have been easily made with zero cuts to service. Now, I want to be clear on this, especially to the people listening in the back and the media. Local governments, we said this from the beginning, they're going to try and excuse away their spending practices. And they are going to try to convince you, the taxpayers, that they need every single dollar to run their government. I'm here to tell you that is not true. That is scare tactics. Because we have been here before, 20 years ago when we had a property tax revolt. We are going through the same thing again. They are going to use the boogeyman of saying that there will be long 911 wait times, not being able to hire fire, not be able to hire police, and they're going to have to eliminate government services. That is also not true. They are going to wage a PR campaign. You guys might have already seen this, and you will continue seeing this ramping up until the November 26 election this year. They are going to wage a PR campaign against you, the people who are funding the excesses of government, saying that you are wrong, that they are right. They are not right. You are right. Government has grown way too quickly, way too fast, and has become a burden on property tax owners here in the state of Florida. The first role of government is to protect its people. That's why this is not true. So the very first thing that governments should be funding are fire and police. So when they try to use the scare tactic saying that we're going to have to cut fire and police, that's not accurate. Because if they say that, then that is a tacit admission to saying that that's the last thing that they look at funding. It should be the first thing that they should be looking at funding, not the bloat and the excesses of the administrative state, which is what government has become, especially over the last 5 years. When local governments come out and say they were going to have to cut fire and police, that is just absolutely flat wrong. Now, local governments are going to come out and try to refute our numbers. They can't. They try to excuse it away, but they can. In fact, we've gotten some letters from local government leaders trying to explain, and I honestly call them back and I say, do you guys even know how local government budgets work at all? I mean, some of them are administrators, some of them are county commissioners, some are city commissioners, and it's sort of quite mind-boggling to understand that they don't even know basic government budgeting. I've been doing this for about 20 years. I know the tricks, and we're going to expose those tricks all the way that we can. They're going to have their big government apologist opinion writers pen columns in their Sunday editorials trying to explain away the high taxes, explain away and make excuses for all this excessive spending. I want you to take a look at that board right there, because when we started this exercise, we started off in Hillsborough County. And we had predicted that stuff like this was going to come. So this board says the increases are largely attributable, the budget increases, mind you, are largely attributable to inflation and rising population, not government graft, local leaders say. Tampa Bay Times, what we're here to call BS. That is absolutely not true. Before we start unveiling the numbers, here's a little about our methodology and why we can say safely that local governments are not being truthful with you. We started with the 2019-2020 pre-COVID budget and indexed it every year for inflation and population 5 years forward, and accommodating for inflation and population. So what does this mean? It means that we, as the exercise, organically grew the budget ourselves. So I want you guys to think we're starting off the 2019-2020 budget, right? So that was pre-COVID. That was the last time local governments was somewhat sane, as if government budgets are sane. But that was our budget. Is we took that number and we indexed it forward for inflation and population for 5 years to figure out what the budget should reasonably be now. And then we compared it to what it actually is. This amount is excessive and wasteful spending because this is the amount that government only got because of the increases in prices, and they took that extra money and quite frankly spent it. And they expanded programs that they should not have been expanding. They added programs that you should not have added. And quite frankly, they've hired a whole mess of full-time employees and increased the administrative state and made the government bigger and more bloated. So when they say that these numbers are wrong and the calculation is archaic, the first thing that you have to understand is that we've already included extra because of inflation and population for extra fire and police because of population growth. This county has had some pretty big growth over the last 5 years. So it only makes sense that you're going to have to add more fire and you're going to have to add more police because the role of government is to keep its people safe. So this county, like every other county, when you have population, you have to add deputies. You have to add more fire and EMS because those are population centric. The more population you have, the more of that you must have. We included raises in those calculations for law enforcement and general government employees. We included extra money because of the increased costs. We included everything that a local government should or would need to deliver services to the taxpayers. Now, I want everyone to understand this, especially the media in the back when they start asking these questions. Is indexing for inflation and population the right way to gauge the growth of government? Now, the media is going to come out and say, no, it's archaic. Nobody uses that. Your local government is going to say, no, it's nonsensical. It doesn't have any real world applications. This is what they won't tell you. Is that the state of Colorado actually uses this very same formula. In 1993, they voted into their constitution. And in their constitution, which was called TABOR, it's a TABOR Act, Taxpayer Bill of Rights, is that they said that the government cannot grow faster than inflation and population. And if it does, you have to refund the money back to the taxpayer. So now, whether they refund the money back to the taxpayer or not, it's not an archaic demonstration. This is what the state of Colorado does to uses to hold government in checks and to hold the tax receipts down. So when they come out and say, oh, that doesn't make any sense, no, it makes sense, because Colorado to many is known as the gold standard when it comes to fiscal responsibility. Not they're not too great on other things, especially passing a marijuana legalization a couple of years ago, which they've had obviously some public policy issues with. But when they say that this formula doesn't make any sense, it makes sense. They just don't want to admit it. They don't want to admit the numbers that we're about to tell you right now. Now, what should scare you is that Nassau County, after inflation and population growth, blew past that number very bigly. So we've crunched these numbers. After we took the 2019-2020 budget, we indexed it forward for inflation and population. I am sorry to report that Nassau County exceeded that number by $53 million. Now, for a small county, that's a lot. Don't get me wrong, it's a growing county. There's going to be needs that have to be met. There's going to be extra demand on services. I get that. They've had some pretty big population growth. I get that also. But we've accounted for a lot of that in the indexing for inflation and population. This is the number over and above that. Let's just say theoretically that they wanted to spend some extra money because of the growth. Fine, not $53 million. What I believe is I believe that the residents here in the state of Florida were overtaxed to the tune of $53 million. This is what we think is excessive and wasteful spending on behalf of the general fund budget. So what does that mean? If you go back to 2019 and index forward, that means since 2019, excuse me, not an index, but since 2019, Nassau County's budget has grown $96,200,000. It's a big number for a relatively small county. I'm going to put this in context even more. Nassau County is sort of unseated. Manatee County is as the worst in terms of percentage basis. Sorry to report, but Nassau County, the budget over the last 5 years increased 96.8%. That is the highest that we've seen so far over 12 local counties. Now again, Nassau County has challenges in terms of increased population, but the population didn't go up 100%. Population didn't go up 70%. The population didn't go up 50%. Population didn't even go up 20%. This is the highest number that we have seen in 12 local governments so far. That is a huge increase for a population increase of 16,597 or 18.3%. So how does 18.3% population growth, and yes, we've had inflationary pressures also, but it should have never grown 96%. Now I understand the county commissioners have adopted a modified rollback rate, and I thank them for not taking all the money that was available to them. But in my book, you're either raising taxes, you're holding taxes steady, or you're cutting taxes. Modified rollback rate means we didn't raise the taxes as much as we could, but we raised them an awful lot. Unfortunately, that's what that number represents. So we're going to try to put this into a little bit of context so you guys can understand what that number means. That means for each new resident that moved into Nassau County, the budget went up around $5,800. For a family of 4 that moved into the county, the budget went up a little over $23,000. Think about that. Every house that was built, another $23,000. Did I say 2,300? 23,000. Another $23,000 was added to the general fund budget. So if you have a whole subdivision with all those houses, you can imagine the amount of money flowing into the coffers of local government. So, to recap, according to our calculations, Nassau County's current budget is $53 million higher than it should be. And to be clear, once you account for population growth and inflation growth, that number is the highest number on a percentage base, 96, that we have seen over the 12. So what does that mean? That means if you have given those and not taxed those property tax owners in the first place, you could have reduced the millage rate if you gave that money back to the taxpayers by 0.95 mils. Now, that is just the general fund portion of the budget. and your property tax bill, excuse me. That is the general fund portion of your property tax bill. There's a school board budget also, right? We didn't even touch the school board yet. Hold that thought. I know there's school board people in here right now, but I'm going to tell you right now that this exercise is not going to be limited just to general government. The school boards are going to be going through this exercise also, because we believe that school boards are wasting money also. So just to be clear on that. So what does that 95.95 mils mean in layman's terms? That means if you were to give that money back to the taxpayer, which is we are advocating for, if you have a tax assessed home of $400,000, you would save about $380 a year. Again, just the general fund budget portion of your property tax bill, not the school board portion. If you have a house that is tax assessed at $500,000, you'd be saving around $475 a year. If you have a property that was assessed at $600,000, you would save around $570 a year. I'm seeing a lot of people like, oh my God. Yeah, look, this is just the reality. The reality is that local government saw a property tax windfall. And look, Nassau County is not, we're not singling out Nassau County. Well, we might be singling out because they're highest on a percentage basis, right? But almost every local government in the state of Florida, 67 counties, 411 cities, almost every one of them done the same thing. They saw the extra money, it was a money grab, and they took it and they've expanded the administrative state. And that's what they've done. So that is real money put back in the pockets of taxpayers. Now, which means with our exercise, the grand total of excessive and wasteful spending that we have identified and uncovered in just 12 local government budgets is over $1.92 billion. This is all money that should be in the hands of the taxpayers in these jurisdictions. This isn't a cumulative total over 5 years. This is just 1 year. I think that once we get around to doing this in every single jurisdiction, the number of excessive and wasteful spending might be double digits. It might be north of $10 million once we start doing all this. Governments are wasting your tax dollars left and right. But then what do? True to form, just like governments, they'll go and cry poor. They'll waste your tax money, and then they'll say, we need more tax money. And then they want to put referendum on the ballots and ask you guys for more and more. Now, if you're like me, you've had enough of this, and you are looking for property tax relief. We are doing this exercise, A, because we care for the taxpayer, and B, because we want to make sure that people know what is ahead of them and the reasons why we are putting property tax relief on the ballot in November 26. Government is not going to right-size itself. The only way you constrain government is by constitution or law, because they're not going to offer it themselves. You know how we know that? They would have done it already. They haven't done it before. They're not going to do it right, not now. Now, I'm probably the worst nightmare for local governments to go around and expose how much extra money that they've spent. But you know what? I'm on the side of the taxpayers. That's what I'm worried about. In fact, the running joke is I'm the Jim Cantori of wasteful spending. If I show up in your area, in your county, it's probably not going to be good news for the taxpayers. So your property taxes are going up not because of essential services, but because of excessive wasteful spending by career politicians and bureaucrats who think you are an endless ATM. As your CFO, I will not stand idle by and allow this to happen without exposing the waste, fraud, and abuse in the system. It is always good to remind government that it is not their money, it is your money. And we need to get back to elected officials who are stewards of your tax dollars thinking that they have to do better at it. You guys are not an endless check for them. They need to live within their means. You guys do it every day at your home. Businesses do it at their businesses. Government needs to get back at doing that. And I'm sorry, way too long, governments have gone unfettered. They just keep on doing it because they can get away with it. Well, I think the days of getting away with it, especially with me in office, are over. But local governments are also tone deaf to what's going on. I mean, you will hear a lot of local candidates for office and local politicians, elected officials, start talking about affordable housing, right? Because it is a big issue. People are moving here to the free state of Florida because they have more opportunity here than in some of the other states. But the challenge that we have is making sure that we don't turn this state into New York or California in terms of taxes. But we're starting to see that right now. But local governments think that everything is fine. I don't think they're listening to the constituents. I'm sure the people in this room and some of the people listening to me in the back have emailed or had conversations with their county commissioners or city commissioners or mayors across the great state of Florida and said, what are you doing with our property taxes? Because they all talk about affordability, but when we show them that they can actually help the affordability crisis in the state of Florida by lowering their housing payment, by lowering the property taxes, they want everyone to do everything else except cut their own budget. So what is that telling you? Is it lip service? Yeah, affordable housing, affordable housing. You can help with affordable housing. Cut people's property taxes. They're not interested in that. So every dollar that comes out of the system that goes into government means dollars that a new family starting off could probably use. I'd rather have the new family have that than have government have that money. They're going to spend it more wisely. A veteran who has served overseas in wars, I want to give those people breaks. I don't want them to take that veteran's money and put it into government. The administrative state is expanding rapidly here in the state of Florida. And when governments get bigger and more bloated, they become less responsive to people, and they eventually start taking away our freedoms as well as our money. Every day, the private sector learns to do without. It's time for government to do the same. Floridians have made it clear that they want property tax relief. They want help. They do not want to fund a big bloated budget. And we are going to deliver it for them on November 26th ballot. I do have some other comments about some other things. I will do that before I take questions. But now, while we're here, I would like to welcome Doug Wheeler, Director of the James Madison Institute. Doug?
Yeah, Doug Wheeler with the James Madison Institute. We've done a lot of research on the property tax issue, and so I really want to thank the CFO for elevating really the two sides of it, the need for fiscal responsibility with local government spending and property tax relief for Floridians around the country. And I think the Florida Agency for Fiscal Oversight Initiative is really driving that message home to Floridians across the country. We deserve to know that our tax dollars are being collected legally, that they are necessary, and that they are being spent responsibly. And the CFO's efforts, we believe, represent exactly the kind of fiscal stewardship that Floridians really have come to expect. This initiative, and I know you'll read a lot of this or that, but it's really not about politics. It's not about punishment. It's about accountability. That's really what it drills down to. When governments become accustomed to growing budgets with ease of collection, very little accountability or oversight, unfortunately, waste typically is inevitable. A serious review of local government spending practices, especially at a time when many of us are already tightening our budgets, facing ever-increasing property tax burdens, it's not appropriate, it's overdue. And so the CFO's office is to be commended for driving this effort. Look, I think irresponsible local spending comes from irresponsible local collections. And this is coming driven from the property tax side. And we can all agree there are a lot of things, and certainly home values have contributed to the upward pressure on levies. But to discard the fact that local spending is also a major driver is just simply disingenuous and absolutely not true. Look, these efforts rightly ask whether current practices are in line with the laws and the principles of fiscal restraint that we as Floridians have become really accustomed to over many years. I think anytime that government takes a hard look at its policies and its procedures relative to the fiscal management of taxpayer dollars, taxpayers should applaud it. We should cheer it, and we should encourage it. And this is no different. The clear message: Floridians want accountability, transparency, and respect for their taxpayer dollars. Florida truly is at a pivotal moment, not only for the tax collection, and I want to make a quick note because I think it's interesting to note that as the CFO talks about their methodology is basically based on a levy cap. And Colorado was Utah. There's some real examples. We believe at the James Madison this is the single most effective way to do both: provide tax relief for Floridians and rein in local government spending. So Florida is at a pivotal moment right now, and if we are going to continue to preserve our reputation as an affordable place for people to come and live and work and raise a family and start a business, we have to ensure that our spending is disciplined, transparent, and accountable to the citizens of the state of Florida. So thank you, CFO.
I appreciate you, sir. Thank you. So I just want to piggyback off of what Doug said. So all the cameras, live stream, you know, you're going to hear a lot from your local media if you haven't already before. This is the methodology that is best used to protect the taxpayer. They don't want to use this methodology because it benefits the taxpayer. So when you hear local government coming out and criticizing our methodology, when you hear the liberal media coming out criticizing our methodology, when you hear opinion writers write Sunday editorials criticizing our methodology, what they're saying is that they do not want a methodology to protect the taxpayer, the people who are actually funding the government